All right, so ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This morning we're pleased to be joined, along with the Minister of Information, Senator the Honorable Royal Reid, by the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Finance and Planning, the Honorable Favour Williams, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, and the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, the Honorable Desmond McKenzie. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for your patience. We're beginning just about 9:20. I'm Naomi Francis, the Press Secretary. This morning, the Honorable Minister of Information, Education, and Youth, Senator the Honorable Royal Reid, will give you the Cabinet notes over the past few weeks. Then we'll take the presentations by the other ministers, and we'll have questions following that. Minister Reid.
Thank you very much, Press Secretary, and let me say good morning to colleague ministers and distinguished members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to this briefing as part of the government's commitment to updating the country regularly on cabinet deliberations and other matters of governance through this forum and other channels. As part of this commitment, members of the cabinet will also be hosting regular press briefings on their specific portfolio responsibilities. We are happy to have with us today the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, Honorable Favour Williams, who will be regular with me at these future briefings. And she will give us a brief overview on the status of the Jamaican economy. We also are happy to have Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, will give us an update on discussions and decisions coming out of last week's CARICOM Heads of Government meeting. And of course, our Honorable Desmond McKenzie, Minister of Local Government and Community Development, will provide an update on the drought conditions affecting sections of the island and plans to mitigate its effect. In your press kits, you will also find, members of the media, a copy of the statement made in Parliament last night by our Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, on the administration's actions in relation to ongoing investigations into the operations of Petrojam. In regards to Cabinet's recent deliberations and decisions, first of all, I'd like to report that a white paper on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise and entrepreneurship policy was presented to Cabinet. This policy had originally been tabled as a green paper in November 2017, and the final validation workshop was convened in January 2018. This was considered by the Economic Growth and Job Creation Committee on March 30th, 2018. The updated policy and implementation plan is noted as providing a cohesive framework for streamlining of activities across MSME ecosystem. There is a roadmap provided which details new national definitions governing the MSME sector, and with 6 thematic areas and policy goals, as well as a 5-year implementation plan. Cabinet gave approval for the signing of the CARICOM Arrest Warrant Treaty. This was open for signature from July 2008 at the 29th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government. This was established within the Caribbean as a system to arrest and surrender requested persons for the purpose of conducting a criminal prosecution for an applicable offense. This will assist in meeting the CARICOM Crime and Security Strategy 2013 by decreasing the levels of illegal activity across the region, removing the complexity, cost, and potential for delay in extradition procedures between and among member states, and establishing a more efficient system of surrender compared to that of the current framework. Approval was also granted by Cabinet for the Food Storage and Prevention Infestation Amendment Act to be tabled and debated in Parliament. We also had presented to Cabinet the Labour Market Reform Agenda 2017, which was approved for tabling in Parliament. The background to this is that in 2016, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security commissioned the Market Research Services Limited to conduct a national labour market survey. The need for this study was driven by the recognition of the importance of ensuring that there is adequate and reliable information on the required skills and competences of the workforce. The study involved a survey of representatives of firms randomly selected from across all industry groups island-wide. A total of 660 firms participated in the survey. We also deliberated on the human trafficking, the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons. Cabinet also gave approval for the joint portfolio responsibility with regard to the handling of human trafficking. Given that the Ministry of Justice is the current chair of the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, the plan is for the Ministry of Justice to provide support to the Ministry of National Security as needed, while continuing to carry out core functions as chair of that said task force. It should also be noted that the government of Jamaica has partnered with the United Nations to launch the Global Blue Heart campaign against human trafficking. Dr. Harris Chang recently launched the initiative in Jamaica. The campaign is an international awareness initiative by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime to fight human trafficking and its impact on society. It seeks to encourage citizens' involvement and inspire action to help stop the crime. The Cabinet also approved drafting instructions for the inclusion of Belgium in the Mutual Assistance Criminal Justice Act through an order in the relevant section. This decision was taken in response to a request from the government of Belgium. In other matters, after reviewing a recent submission by the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, MICAF, Cabinet has agreed to the establishment of a National Crafts Council. This was further to a concept paper presented by the Ministry of Tourism to Cabinet. The submission by MICAF highlighted the rationale for the policy and noted that the vision was for a viable, sustainable, diversified, and internationally competitive industry, showcasing authentic Jamaican products that had the capacity to sustain livelihood and leverage inherent creativity in cultural expression among Jamaican people. The cross-cutting nature of the craft industry was highlighted by the strategic objectives of the policy. This includes the establishment of a craft council and the establishment of an artisan villages. Given the nature of the industry, an integrated multi-sectoral approach across ministries and agencies was deemed necessary. Cabinet approved the tabling of the Income Tax Amendment Act 2018. The purpose of the bill is to, one, make permanent the removal of the exemption previously provided for the general insurance companies, insurance brokers, and agents for the 15% withholding tax on ongoing insurance premiums in circumstances specified in the Act. And two, to validate and confirm as lawful the withholding tax on ongoing insurance premiums collected during the period 30th of December 2017 to the date of coming into operation of the more permanent provisions. And thirdly, indemnify the government of Jamaica and persons purporting to act on behalf of the government in good faith and inadvertent as to the collection being invalid, improper, or unlawful during that period. Cabinet also approved the tabling of the Green Paper on the National Policy on Environmental Systems for presentation in Parliament. It was observed that the development of the policy would fulfill international obligations and address risks and opportunities to provide competitive edge in trade, to allow for regulatory framework with respect to enforcement in general economic and social benefits. The intent of the policy is to stimulate businesses, the public sector, and municipalities to improve environmental performance. Cabinet also approved the tabling of the revised National Policy for Senior Citizens 2017 as a green paper. The thematic areas explored included 1, social engagement and participation, 2, social protection, income security, and employment, 3, health and wellness, 4, physical environments, protection and safety, 5, family integration and intergenerational transfers, and 6, governance and capacity building. We also, over the period, reviewed and approved for table in Parliament a number of annual reports covering periods as far back as 2006. We have the NSWMA, we had the Housing Agents of Jamaica, Financial Institutions Services Limited, the Racing Commission, the Private Security Regulation Authority, PICA, JCIV, the Jamaica Agricultural Society, Audited Financial Statement of the Women's Center of Jamaica, the Jamaica Library Services, the National Water Commission, and Jamaica Dairy Development Board, the National Library Service, Mine, Chase, Consumer Affairs Commission, Fair Trading Commission, General Legal Counsel, FinSAC, Local Electoral Commission of Jamaica, Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation, Norman Mann International Airport, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, the Land Divestment Report, Audited Financial Statement for Ports Management and Security Limited, National Family Planning Board, the Child Development Agency, the National Land Agency, Agricultural Credit Board, and all this is listed in your press kit. I would now want to inform you also on the appointment of the Public Investment Management Committee. Cabinet approved the appointment of a 13-member Public Investment Management Committee, PIMC, chaired by the Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, and Honorable Favour Williams to serve as Vice Chair. PIMC will comprise the ministers, additionally, of Health, Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries, 2 ministers without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Economic Development, Honorable Darrell Vaz, Honorable Lester Mike Henry, the Financial Secretary, JAMPRO's Executive Director, Director General of the PIOJ, General Manager of UDC, CEO of NEPA, the CEO of the Public Investment Management Committee of the PIMC Secretariat. I'd also like to announce that Dr. Wayne Henry and the team from the Planning Institute of Jamaica will be present to file a report reviewing the implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This is a voluntary report wherein Cabinet took note of the significant improvements of access to water, healthcare, and adequate housing. The team will lead discussions for Jamaica at the UN for a high-level set of meetings on achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals to date, and they are expected to do so between today on the 18th, that's July 11th to 18th. I'd like now to conclude by giving you an update on recent contracts that have been approved by Cabinet. First of all, the installation and commissioning of a sea walk floating pier of cruise ships for Port Royal. Cruise Ventures AS has been approved for an award of contract to supply, install, and commission a sea walk floating pier at the Kingston Cruise Ship Facility proposed for the development at Port Royal. The sum is $7,480,000 US and comes on the recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee of Cabinet. Claims adjudication services. Contract of claims adjudication services was awarded to Advanced Integration Systems Limited for services to the National Health Fund with no objection from eGov Limited. The contract sum is in the amount of $433,743,689 Jamaican. The supply of liquefied natural gas to the UHWI. Cabinet approved the award of a contract to the Industrial Gases Limited in the amount of $395,509,140. Housing and infrastructure works at Longville Park Astrom Building Systems has been awarded a contract in the sum of $161,576,503 to carry out a design and build contract for the build-out of the Longville Park Housing Development Phase 3A. Lewin Allen and Associates has been approved for contract in the sum of $99,563,000, including GCT charges. And this is to undertake the cadastral mapping of the Essex Valley Agricultural Development Project area. Stone Plus Limited has been awarded a contract in the sum of $119,780,040.10 to undertake rehabilitation of One Spring Valley in Deeside in Trelawney and Flamstead in Garlands in St. James. This is in keeping with the Sugar Transformation Program. Cabinet approved also the award of a contract to Surrey Paving Aggregates Limited in the sum of $83,760,472. This contract will see the rehabilitation of the wastewater treatment facilities at the Unions Estate in Central Village in St. Catherine. Stone Plus Limited has also been awarded a contract in the sum of $109,990,846. This is to carry out rehabilitative works under the Granville Integrated Infrastructure Project in St. James. There's also an approval for a variation of contract for the pipe replacement services in Westmoreland. Through the IDB, there was identified need for variations on the contract for and pipe replacement works project on the way from Scotts Cove to Belmont in Westmoreland as follows. The Asphaltic Concrete Enterprises Limited, $51,651,511.37. Additional road works based on the need for additional pipe replacement works in the sum of $65,182,942.22. An additional fee to NWA for $4,021,396.25. The redevelopment of Hamden Wharf Phase 1, Falmouth Trelawney. Surrey Paving Aggregates Limited was approved for the award of this contract in the sum of $722,514,718.58 for the development of Hamden Wharf Phase 1 in Falmouth, Trelawney. In regards to the development of the Kingston Logistics Park, China Harbour Engineering Company Limited, on the recommendation of the National Contracts Commission, has been approved for the first phase of the multi-phase development of the Nearport Logistics Park as a strategic project on lands adjacent to the Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited. The approved contract is in the sum of $25,800,000 US. In regards to the National Spatial Plan for Jamaica, Acclimatized LAC Limited UK has been awarded a contract in the sum of US $872,041 for preparation of 7 technical papers for a new spatial plan for Jamaica. I want to also now to report on the first cross to Macfield Road Improvement Project on the Mid-P. China Harbour Engineering has been approved for delivery of contracted work to upgrade the first cross to Macfield Road Improvement Project across the parishes of Hanover to Westmoreland in the sum of $24,983,130 US. This is in keeping with the major infrastructural improvement project, Mid-P. Caramed Apotec Limited was approved for provision of pharmaceutical services to the National Health Fund in the sum of $67,605,432. And this is a 24-month contract. Massey Distributed Limited was approved for supply of pharmaceutical services to JADEP in the amount of $1,527,101. This is a 24-month contract as well. And let me also update you on the Maxfield Park Housing Development. Surrey Paving and Aggregates Limited has been awarded a contract in the sum of $100,887,175. This is to undertake infrastructure works in keeping with the Maxfield Park Housing Development Project. Housing Development Windsor Trelawney, Trevor Dunkley and Company Limited has been awarded a contract in the sum of $400 million and $17,400 to undertake civil infrastructure works on, for the Windsor Housing Development Project in Trelawney. Online passport application services, Canadian Banknote Company Limited has been approved for the provision of services to establish an online passport application system for the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, PICA. The sum of $1,200,000 US is the amount provided for the provision of services to the government of Jamaica. Villages of Colbeck Castle Development, Astrom Building System Limited has been awarded a contract in the sum of $887,302,988.42 for the infrastructural works under phase 3 and 4 between the parishes of St. Catherine and Clarendon. Jacksonville Housing Scheme Clarendon, review of drainage component critical. NF Barnes and Company has been awarded a contract in the sum of $141,679,405 to undertake civil infrastructure works for the Jacksonville Housing Scheme in Clarendon. Cabinet took particular note of the need to monitor the construction of adequate drainage system in light of the tendency for flooding in this particular community. The Bernard Lodge Land Use Plan. Further to detailed research undertaken inclusive of inputs from the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, and Sugar Company of Jamaica Holdings Limited, a master plan was submitted for the development of 1,893 hectares or 4,677 acres of land in the Bernard Lodge community. This plan includes housing, agricultural, and commercial elements, as well as social services and infrastructure. Cabinet has directed the appointment of an enterprise team to be appointed to ensure that a plan which has been designed to support renewal, transformation, and sustainability of agriculture and is linked to the Caymanas Economic Zone project. Airports improvement fees, Cabinet gave approval for the use of US $1,358,250 from the airport improvement fees collected at the Norman Mann International Airport and the Sangster International Airport to be utilized to acquire automated border control kiosks and also upgrade existing kiosks for use by PICA. Cabinet also approved the Mutual Education and Cultural Exchange Act of 1961 programs with the United States of America. Coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the program is focused on strengthening the relationship with the congressional representatives of the United States of America. Next, the synchronizing of dates for the review of toll rates. To improve the management by the government and also by citizenry, a common date has been established as July 18, 2018 for review of all toll rates. The funding of the bobsleigh team, Cabinet agreed to provide contributory support in the sum of $50,000 US to Jamaica's bobsleigh team towards the covering of costs incurred during their recent competition in the Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea. The provision of private security services to Westmoreland Health Services. Shock Electronics Security Limited has been awarded a 2-year contract for the provision of security services to the Westmoreland Health Services. The contract sum is $111,132,489. Tools, labor, and planning material, tourism resort maintenance contract. National Solid Waste Management Authority was awarded a 5-month contract in the sum of $340,049,797.83 for the provision of tools, labor, and planting material to handle the aesthetics of design tourism resort communities, as well as additional areas which contribute to the tourism product. Cabinet approved a follow-on contract for TAJ for the provision of motor vehicle consumables, inclusive of stickers, registration certificates, title certificates, Teslins, and laminates used to provide driver's license cards in the amount of $102,007,195.43 to Del LaRue International Limited. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my report on recent highlighted decisions coming out of Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Reid, for that comprehensive update on cabinet deliberations so far. Members of the press, I know it's a lot to chew on, so you do have your press kits. You can go through some of the items before we have our question and answer segment. May I now invite the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the Honorable Favour Williams, to update you on some major milestones in terms of achievements in the economy. Minister Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to my colleague ministers and to our media partners. I'm pleased this morning to draw your attention to news from Staten, which was released on Friday, that the economy grew 1.4% in the January to March quarter 2018 versus the similar quarter in 2017. Of note, in that report, all the goods producing sectors grew year on year, and similarly, all 8 service industries recorded growth. Additionally, in June, we also received report from Staten that inflation remains contained at 3.1% at the end of May 2018. And as a third positive about the economy, you might have heard this morning, consumer and business confidence continued on an upward path. Market research services characterized business and consumer confidence as steady. We are very pleased with the continued direction of the positive trends in the economy and the prospects that they hold for job creation, which is at the heart of what Jamaicans want to see. Robust job creation, giving them the opportunity to make decisions about what it is that they would like to do, giving them the opportunity to take care of their individual lives and their families. So we are pleased with the continued direction of the positive trends in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Williams. Really appreciate that update and certainly some good news in terms of happenings in the economy. May I now invite Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, to speak. Of course, last week we had a very successful 39th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM. In fact, chaired by our own Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, and many have said that the decisions coming out of CARICOM have been the most far-reaching since the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, and especially too having regard to movement, free movement of personnel within CARICOM. Minister Johnson-Smith.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Got them. So Jamaica was pleased and honored to host the 39th Summit of Heads of Government and State of the Caribbean Community last week under the chairmanship of the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica. We were pleased to welcome for the first time in many years all 15 heads of CARICOM, as well as 4 of the 5 associate members of CARICOM, and this was recognized as quite a feat, together with the fact that we had the largest number of delegates in the history of these summits. We can state, coming out of these, out of the Heads Summit, as a matter of interest for the Jamaican people primarily. First item I will bring to your attention is that we had frank and robust discussions on the Golding Report that was commissioned by Prime Minister Holness. And there was an agreement that in November of this year, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister Rowley, will host a meeting of CARICOM heads specifically dedicated to discussions on the CSME. And one of the documents which will guide the discussions at that meeting will be the Golding Report and the recommendations therein. Another major issue of interest for Jamaicans would be the fact that heads agreed on the procedures for denial of entry of persons, of CARICOM nationals moving within the region, and that the procedures will be implemented by August 1 of this year. So this is a matter which you know has been of great importance to us, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has been working assiduously with the Secretariat and across the institutions of CARICOM to get these procedures agreed. What they will do is harmonize the practices of immigration officers across the region and retrain, provide new forms, standard forms, and information that will allow for consistent, dignified treatment of persons moving within the region. And this is in recognition of the fact that the right of free movement is not an unabridged right. We all have responsibilities as we move as well. But we do expect that we all will be treated in a dignified manner and that procedures are in place which are predictable, transparent, and consistent. The fact that they have been set for implementation on August 1 is being sincerely welcomed by Jamaica, because this is something that it is quite unusual for a process to be completed within 2 years within the regional mechanisms, and this therefore has been considered a win for our country. Regarding the free movement of skills regime, we've had a recommitment by heads to implementation of all 10 categories of skills which are included in this regime. And this is important because only Jamaica, Guyana, and Grenada have implemented all 10. And just as a reminder, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade recently launched a brochure, which is on our website as well, and which we're making available at the various branches of heart training centers, as well as to the HOPE participants in the HOPE program, so that our young people can recognize that there are opportunities not only in Jamaica but elsewhere in the Caribbean. And these regimes are to be implemented by the end of December this year. So this includes, and I'll just remind you, not only university graduates, artists, musicians, sport persons, media workers, registered nurses and qualified teachers, but artisans with CVQ training and qualifications, so your welders, your masons, your cosmetologists, domestic workers with Caribbean vocational qualification as well, which is very important to us because we recognize that there were many people who here wanted to move and work in that capacity, but there were challenges in getting that category recognized across the region. So at this point in time, all of those areas are not, all of those categories are not available in all 10 countries, and we're hoping, sorry, in all 15 countries, but we expect that at the end of this year that they will have been implemented. An important and complementary agreement in this respect was the agreement on the protocol on contingent rights. What are contingent rights? They're the rights that attach to dependents of persons who are moving under the skilled regime. So right now, without any changes, your spouse can move with you and your children can move with you. But what the protocol will implement is that your spouse will be able to work without a work permit as well, and that your children will be entitled to the same benefits that children of those countries are also granted. So if uniforms, books, and lunch are provided by a particular country at the primary level, your children will be entitled to that as well. So what this does is increases the certainty of the implications on a family that wishes to move. You'll be able to move with a vehicle and household accessories, which again makes the expense of moving reduced, and makes the concept of moving to another island seem far more accessible. And so this is something that we're very excited about because the protocol had been stuck since 2013, and the fact that it has now been agreed, signed on to by 6 countries is a positive development, and we look forward to the other countries adopting same as well. In respect of the implementation of decisions, I know persons have been asking what will make this different, what will make this conference different. And while we recognize that proof of pudding is still in the eating, so that we will remain part of the monitoring process, the Prime Minister's subcommittee on the CSME is chaired by Barbados, and the new Prime Minister of Barbados has given her commitment to not only bring new energy to the process, but she has given her commitment to hold the first committee meeting in September and to thereafter hold quarterly meetings which will follow up and monitor on what is being done at the heads level to implement. Complementary decision that may make things different is that decisions of heads, once they have been ratified, circulated, and confirmed, will be placed on the website of CARICOM as well. So what this allows is for nationals across the region to see what their heads have agreed and to inquire, what did my head agree? Why did they not agree? And if they are implementing or not, why and why not? So that there's another level of accountability to the people of the Caribbean, and we view this as a highly positive development. There were clearly several other matters that were addressed, and if they are of interest to you, I hope you will ask questions about them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. May I also pause to acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Ambassador Marcia Gilbert-Roberts, and her team from the Ministry. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the team of ministers here this morning. I'm pleased to introduce the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, who provide an update for us on the dry spell. I believe the Meteorological Service has now classified some areas as having drought conditions. So Minister will certainly give us an update and say what government will be doing. Minister?
Thank you, Naomi, colleague, cabinet ministers, permanent secretaries, including my own permanent secretary, members of the media. As you are aware, the Meteorological Service of Jamaica has recently drawn attention to the severe conditions that have been existing across the country. The Met Office has issued drought alert for sections of St. Catherine, Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, and a drought watch is presently existing in the parish of Portland. This is in keeping with the forecast that the 3-month period of July to September will reflect higher than normal temperatures with lower than normal levels of rainfall. These conditions are not synonymous to Jamaica, but are conditions that are affecting parts of the Americas, Canada, as well as the United Kingdom. The government has taken careful note of the situation, not only in these parishes, but across the island, and will be moving to ensure the continuation of normal economic and residential life. Accordingly, the first phase of a mitigation program to alleviate these drought conditions will involve the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development as the ministry with responsibility for minor water supplies. The government will be making available some $30 million to be allocated to the municipal corporations in selected parishes for the trucking of water to the various affected communities. And further to that allocation, which will be reviewed, the government will be providing some $50 million to finance a mitigation island-wide cleanup program in critical areas of the country that is prone to flooding and other such areas of concern. In Douglas Castle, the government is spending some $35 million to create the climate for improved conditions in a community that has been severely affected due to recent floodings. The government will, when it becomes necessary, advise the country of the steps that are being taken as we approach the heart of the hurricane season and as we are experiencing severe drought conditions across the country. I thank you.
So thank you, Minister Mackenzie. Really appreciate that, and certainly some very useful and valuable information concerning what the government will be doing and implementing regarding what's happening in areas affected by drought. My apologies to Ms. Marcia Henry Martin, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development. She's also here with us this morning. And so now, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, it is your time to ask questions of the ministers. All four are available for your questions. I see and recognize Dashan Hendricks at the back. Before you do, though, there are two microphones. Would you please take the mic? If you could stand, because I believe we are also streaming. So for those who are all over on the social media and internet, they'll be able to see you as well. There's a microphone that will be coming to you. Yes. Thank you.
Mic check. Okay,
Yes.
Good morning. I was saying if I stand up, I may block some cameras.
I'm sure you know how to move. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, this first question is for Minister Mackenzie. Just a quick clarification before we get into other questions on the allocation to municipal corporations, the $30 million. Is it $30 million in total or $30 million to each municipal corporation that will get money? Just a clarification. You were in.
Minister, if you could, please. Thank you.
The 30 million will be made to the municipal corporations which are affected more. So it will be shared based on the needs of the municipalities that are involved.
And it is the four: St. Catherine, Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, and Portland.
Yeah, and sections of St. Mary, which I did not mention, will get some attention out of it. But this is just the first of what the government will be providing if the situation does not improve over the next coming weeks.
And if it doesn't improve, what is the plan right now?
Well, the government is prepared to spend whatever we can to ensure that adequate water is provided, not just for residential use, but also we have to take into consideration parishes like Manchester and St. Elizabeth, which are critical to the economic growth of the country in terms of being the parishes that is responsible for a significant portion of our food supplies.
Maybe not for your ministry, but we constantly have these long-term dry spells year after year after year. Is there any plan in terms of mitigation apart from just trucking water and in terms of a solution going forward?
Well, the Ministry of Local Government has been constructing what we call water shops in selected parishes where there is a chronic shortage of water. That perhaps is not the answer. What we need is improved rainfall, and I know that the Ministry of Water has been spending a significant amount of money to increase the water supply, and the National Irrigation Scheme has also been doing some work to upgrade existing systems to ensure that adequate water is provided to the areas that is desperately in need of that commodity.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Dashan. Are there other questions? Lady in the back. Could you just identify yourself, your media house, please?
Sorry, I just guess everybody's way. Good morning, Simone Absalom for PBCJ. I have several questions. First, for Minister Mackenzie, there were some discussions in Parliament about thoughts for recycling. How far are those developments?
The enterprise committee that was established has been working to deal with the issues. Up to yesterday, a meeting of the committee was held, and as soon as we have more details, the country will be so advised. But the work is on in earnest, and it is well advanced in terms of the deadline that has been set.
All right, thank you very much. My next question is to Minister Johnson Smith. You spoke about the skills exchange coming on board. I wanted a clarification in terms of domestic workers. What are the developments on their side? I know they were having some concerns about traveling to other Caribbean countries and applying that trade.
Right, so the decision that's been taken by heads doesn't solve all the problems immediately, because there are the administrative processes that need to be put in place, and where legislation is required, that as well. Part of the issue that we had been experiencing with the movement of domestic workers was the existence of certified qualification for domestic workers. So our very own HEART was actually instrumental in working to develop the criteria for certification of domestic workers. And the issue has been looking at regional equivalencies and ensuring that the certification is recognized in those countries as well. That has been the issue, and we hope that that will be rationalized quickly now that our process is in place and now that this recommitment has been given for end of this year. All right.
Thank you, Minister. Anyone else with questions? On this side, please. Mr. Moore, if you could fully identify yourself and your media house. Please stand for us.
Prince Moore, RGR. Mr. Reid, I was wondering if you could give us an update on the ECJ and the appointment of a director of election. I know that Mr. Gladpool Brown has been acting in that position since March. Could you give us a timeline as to when a director of election would be appointed?
Thank you, Prince.
Well, that, of course, the ECJ has an independent governance structure, so we'll have to await that body to go through the process of appointment. I can't here give you a definitive answer when that will be done. So I'll get an update on where they are in the process, and the next post-cabinet I'll give you an update.
Thank you. Other questions? Mrs. Miller?
RGR.
Yes.
Dion Jackson Miller, RGR. Asking how much the, what was the word? Agreement of the Petrojam GM to step down, if there was a severance agreement with him, and how much is that going to cost the taxpayers?
Minister, you would, or we have several persons. Robert? Yeah, I know the Prime Minister spoke to it yesterday, and that matter certainly was raised.
Based on the information that I have, we learned late last evening that discussions between the board and the GM ended with the GM deciding to step down. We have not been advised formally as to what the nature of any severance package, if there's a severance package. What we do know is that the GM operated under a specific contract which has various clauses. If you wish, we could get that contract and have you look at it, so that could give you some additional information.
Sorry, could you use a microphone in this?
Thank you, but the terms of the contract, as you would know, doesn't necessarily mean that there wouldn't have been a separate discussion, especially given the Prime Minister's wording that the GM had, quote unquote, agreed to step down, which almost always indicates some kind of negotiated exit.
But the GM does not function directly through a political process. He functions under the board of management. So what I think I would have to do is ask the board the nature of the discussions and whether or not there was a severance package so that they can inform us so that we can inform you.
And you're committing to doing that?
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Let's have this young man before you come again, Dashan, please, if you could. All right, William, yes, go ahead.
Good morning, William Mitchell, Nationwide News. Question for the Ministry of Finance. First of all, is there truly an M1 government pay scale in the Ministry of Finance, and as described as how it operates at Petrojam, and was this sanctioned by the Ministry of Finance?
All right, ministers coming.
With regards to that particular question, I mean, that's a very detailed question, and I would have to commit to getting back to you in terms of that specific question. All right.
Would you be able to answer?
Yeah, there are several scales that exist across government. As you might have heard, I think some 385 or so salary. You have salary levels, and within the salary levels, there are different points within that. So as to that very specific question about M1, I'd be happy to come back to you.
Well, would you be able to answer if, let's say, the HR manager, she was given a raise 2-3 months into the job, would you be able to say if this was unique to her and what justified that raise?
I think, William, based on the minister's response a while ago, in terms of detailed checks concerning that particular matter and the M1 scale in particular, I believe that you'd have to do some more research to get back to you specifically on that. But thank you. All right, I believe Dashan, 1 second.
I think that I would like to add some context. As you are aware, there is a process taking place through the Auditor General, who will be examining in detail all issues related to the public accusations and allegations. There's also a process by the Integrity Commission that is taking place. The Prime Minister alerted the public last evening that the Auditor General will quickly produce a report. And I suspect that a lot of these questions that you have as it relates to the details of employment and engagement, which are managerial decisions, will be answered by the Auditor General.
Thank you as well, Robert. Dashan, again.
All right, this question for Minister Reid in relation to Petrojam. And yesterday, the Prime Minister in Spanish Town said that based on the evidence that has come before Cabinet so far on the affairs at Petrojam, most of the allegations in the public domain are not true. What exactly is not true? If you are changing a board, you're looking to update the public bodies management oversight, you're changing the GM, you're going for more oversight, putting a member of the PCJ on the Petrojam board. What exactly has Cabinet seen that is not true, which the Prime Minister is saying a lot of allegations are not true?
So even ahead of Minister coming, of course, the Minister is conferring with his Cabinet colleagues. Again, we'd stress that the Prime Minister has made it clear that what the government wants to also do is to pronounce on best practices. You'd have heard a raft of changes that the Prime Minister has announced in Parliament, including the issue of donations from public bodies. Those are far-reaching. Now, what we're trying to ensure is that where there may seem to be loopholes, that we fill those gaps with concrete policy changes and directives going forward. Minister, would you like to add anything further to that? Tell you what, let's have Robert take it. Robert?
I suspect the reason why I'm in a position to give you some clarity is because the Petrojam matter and the energy portfolio is now at the office of the Prime Minister. So we would have been au fait with several meetings that have taken place between the Permanent Secretary and the management of the Energy Ministry with the Prime Minister. So the Minister of Information sits in Cabinet, so he has an overall understanding of the policies and developments, but as it relates to specific details as to the process going forward, I would have been sitting in those meetings which he would not have been able to sit in. As it relates specifically to the questions you asked as to what is it that we found, the Prime Minister said in Parliament yesterday that there's a haystack of accusations and we need to find the needle of truth in it. And that's what we have found in the discussions with the management and the executives of Petrojam, is that there are a lot of innuendo floating around, some of which are not fit for this mic. And that's what I think the Prime Minister meant. Facts as it relates to a general understanding that there was breakdown in systems as it relates to how things were managed. For example, the traveling, where notification was supposed to have been made about travel, which was not made. So I think that's what the Prime Minister was speaking about. I don't think the Prime Minister was speaking specifically as it relates to evidence as the word that was used, because evidence has a particular definition. I think what we have is information coming from a report from permanent secretaries, from managers, as to some systemic issues that took place, not evidence of wrongdoing per se. And I think that's what the AG has a mandate to look into the systemic management of the organization. And in her report, she will give us evidence as to what are some of these acts and omissions which may have taken place that require the intervention of the government from a deeper policy level and may even require investigations from other state agencies.
Robert, before you move, Mr. Morgan, just a quick follow-up. You said some of the allegations and innuendos being made are not even fit for this mic, but which ones are that you can share with us?
No, so I gave a general, with an example as it relates to the traveling. There is a clear, I think, convention, I don't know, I don't have the document in me about traveling, and that there should be some alert given to the leadership of the ministry as it relates to travel. I don't know if that took place. But I don't want to stand here and pronounce, as you use the word evidence, because I cannot marshal that. But we should allow the investigation to take place so that we can get an objective understanding of what took place, not a subjective view of the government or of the opposition. All right?
Thank you so much. And just to add that, again, the reports are being compiled, things are being done, and once they are fully compiled, certainly we'll update the media. Mrs. Miller.
Thank you. Still on Petrojam, the Prime Minister said yesterday the government has nothing to hide.
Right.
Will the report that was prepared by the Permanent Secretary be released publicly? And if so, when? If I could just say two others at the same time. We haven't heard much about the cockpit country recently. Is that still on Cabinet's agenda? And if so, what's happening with that?
One second. Just regarding the cockpit country, recall that there was a decision made and a presentation was made in Parliament.
Yes,
specifically
and that was some
though.
time ago, and we haven't heard much since then. So I'm asking if
The boundaries have been. The boundaries have been.
I'm aware, Naomi.
Yes.
I'm saying we haven't heard anything since then. Number three. I'm just asking in relation to the regularity of these briefings. Understood the information minister had said every 2 weeks. If so, I'm asking why not every week? And join to that, I think it's time for PM quarterly briefing. Has that been said?
Yes. All right, so let me have Minister Reid take the last one. And Dion, if you could help me though, specifically with the cockpit country that you're asking. You've made a general statement, but specifically...
The boundaries were declared. What has happened since then?
What has happened since then? All right. 1 second. Yes, Minister.
Thank you very much, Press Secretary, Madam Dion Jackson Miller. Yes, I have announce that in terms of the resumption of these briefings, that the schedule will be fortnightly, which has been the practice since I have been in the portfolio. So until I can recalibrate to make it every week, that is the standing arrangement that we are pursuing at this particular time.
Thank you, Dion. And just to report concerning the Prime Minister's quarterly, yes, a date has been set, but you would realize that the Prime Minister recently has been someone who's been invited by overseas leaders to several international engagements. He was at G7 earlier this year. He's been invited to attend the G20 in South Africa and will be off the island, I beg your pardon, the BRICS, I beg your pardon, the BRICS Summit in South Africa. Thank you so much, PS. He'll be off then, but we have, in fact, scheduled it, and we'll let the media know exactly when that will be. Of course, we have always given you some adequate notice.
Sorry, if I could just follow up again with Senator Reid. Sorry, Senator, but that really wasn't an answer. You say you've set it for every 2 weeks until you can recalibrate. I don't know. What does that mean? Why can't it be every week?
All right. You want OPM to? All right, we'll do the OPM.
So there are various situations that inform the post-cabinet press briefing. A lot of it has to do with the ability to not only schedule the briefing in light of the significant amount of work that the government is doing, but also the ability to marshal all the information necessary to ensure that we give the proper answers. We recognize that there was a challenge where we did not fulfill our obligation to the media. And I think what we're trying to do is we're not trying to overpromise and underperform. We're trying to set a framework where when we make a commitment based on the minister's schedule, based on the schedule of other ministers who have to come here, we can say to the media fairly and strongly, with the ability to fulfill the commitment, that we will be here, we will answer the questions, and ministers will be present. In our discussions between the minister, myself, OPM, we said that we think, based on the schedule of everyone, based on the amount of information that we need, based on the schedule of cabinet, that it is best that we keep it every other week. But we are always open. The minister is open. I am open. Naomi is open to whenever media has a question to ask, they can call us, and we will do the research and we'll get the answer to you as soon as we can. So I want to say, before you ask your follow-up, we're not seeking to restrict access of the media. What we're seeking to do is not give you a commitment that we cannot fulfill based on schedule. Because I know, Dion, as head of the Press Association, you have an interest in an open media landscape. So we're trying to create that.
Let's do all the media representatives here.
Yes, and I agree with that as well. So it is a plan to give access, to create a proper framework going forward where you can get the answers, where the minister can be able to give the answers without making commitments that he may not be able to fulfill.
The PS report.
And to Mrs. Jackson Miller and members of the media, we always stand open, ready, and welcoming of your questions and concerns. And wherever we find possible where we can either respond ourselves and certainly facilitate responses, we're ready to do that. Your other question, Dion. PS report?
The permanent
the Petrojam, beg your pardon, yes. We did
that, as you can imagine, is a cabinet document which comes under, yes, I know, it comes under a particular framework in terms of legal restrictions. However, PM has articulated last night that he will seek to have that issue dealt with. But there's another issue that I think we need to also be conscious of. The cabinet, the PS report was a foundation on which other information was built. And it does have things in it that are not fully responded to or fully answered, which will be answered in other investigative reports. So I want to caution you that getting the report to cabinet does not necessarily give you all the answers that you're seeking. What will give you the answers that you're seeking is the Auditor General's report, which is the objective and full review of Petrojam. So we'll have discussions internally. Ministers and cabinet, I'm sure, will have discussions about when and how this document that you're seeking can be distributed in a manner that gives you a fair understanding of the nature, the spirit, and everything that took place in the discussions.
All right, thank you, Robert. Any further questions? Prince?
Just a follow-up on the
Yes.
cockpit country. Yesterday, the Jamaica Environment Trust raised concern about the slow pace at which the process is taking to write the boundaries into law. And they also raised concern that residents are unaware of the implications, and they are saying that there's an absence of information about the process. When will those concerns be addressed?
All right. As the reason why I'm responding is because the whole environment portfolio resides at OPM as well. As you would be aware, a legislative process is a process that takes place over a period of time, and there are certain challenges within the legislative process that have been historical. There are many bills that need to be written. There are many discussions that need to take place around the process of legislation. But what I will say to you, though, is that we will go and we'll speak to the National Land Agency, we'll speak to the relevant agencies to get you the information that you seek as it relates to where the legislative process is, where the discussions are, and what the plans are. As I said earlier, the government maintains an open door policy. Now that you have said to us that JET has an issue, the Minister of Information and OPM will work together to contact JET to find out what specific issues they have and seek to get answers to them. Minister?
Beg your pardon, Minister concurs. Are there any further questions? Mrs. Miller. It has a pause
One would
button,
think I would
yes.
know how to handle a microphone.
I
My
would think
apologies.
so. Carry
Just
on.
following up. So just
Yes.
for clarification, so because you did say, Robert, that you're going to try to get the information. So is it that you're not sure at this time if, for instance, drafting instructions have already been issued, or if it's with the Chief Parliamentary Council, or not yet at that stage? Just trying to be a little bit more clear.
Right. So the process of, as you would imagine, Dion, the cockpit country is a very significant geographic area. So first, there has to be a survey to specifically identify which communities, which road, which forest section is involved in the general understanding of what the boundaries would be, because it has to be specific based on the implications that the decision has brought on in terms of the ability of persons to farm, the ability of persons to use the land for other economic objectives. Then there's also discussions that have to take place with stakeholders within the community, which started before the boundaries were announced, and have to continue now to get them on board, not just to understand what the boundaries will be legally, but also to understand their rights and obligations as it relates to what the boundary means for them, their livelihood, and their families. That process continues. What I am committing to do is giving you a proper report as to what all the specifics are as it relates to where the process is and where the process will go, and give you a general, not a specific timeline, because you know the exigencies of the process, as to what will happen over the next couple months as it relates to the cockpit country. But the intention of the government is clear. No mining in the cockpit country, defined boundaries, making the investments to ensure that the cockpit country remains as it can be and as it should be for the benefit of the people of Jamaica.
And we do understand that there needs to be a level of public education around the matter. I mean, once all the matters are finalized, certainly we'll begin that process as well. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? We've been at it for a while. All right. And there being no further questions, may I thank you so much for joining us today for this week's post-cabinet press briefing. May I thank the Minister of Information, Education and Youth, Senator the Honourable Royal Reid, along with him, the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the Honourable Faithful Williams. Beside her, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, the Honourable Desmond McKenzie, and of course, Senator the Honourable Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Thank you so much for joining us, and certainly we'll see you next time.